It's time for another speaking tip. And what I'm focusing on right now with this series of speaking tips are how to be authentic to the audience. When you come up and you're going to speak, how to really be you on stage. And as I've gone over in a couple of the earlier tips, it's very easy to get on stage and we find our personality sort of morphing, trying to get the audience to like us. And if that's actually taking place, the audience is actually the author or the authentic source in the speech, because we're trying to be what they want. So the audience is dictating how we are. As a speaker, we need to know who we are and stand up and create an effect on the audience. And that's why authenticity is so important. So my tip in this video is, what is your philosophy? Actually, more specifically, I'm not looking for one little phrase that you handle your entire life with that sums up everything you do in your life. Probably more accurately, I should say, what are your philosophies? Because we have a lot of philosophies in life. Now, for this tip, I want to define philosophy. In the dictionary, philosophy is defined as a system of principles for guidance in practical affairs. So what are your principles that you use in practical affairs? What are the values that you live your life by? And when we define the values, the philosophies of our life, we define who we are. Because really the values we live by speak a lot more about who we are than, the height that we have, the color of our eyes, the color of our hair, the size of my biceps. The values I live my life by define who I am. Now, the root word of philosophy, where it comes from a Latin word, philo, which means loving, and it comes from a Latin word, sophi, which means skill or wisdom. So it's a loving skill or wisdom. Okay? So what we're looking at is some wisdom or skill that we have in life that allows us to love what we do, because we've worked out what works. So yeah, I have a philosophy, therefore I love what I do. Now, let me give you an example of a few of my philosophies. First of all, I have a philosophy of speaking. Quite honestly, I have a lot of philosophies of speaking. But one of them I'll share with you is, I will only share with an audience what I know works. There are so many people in the speaking industry that go take a course, or they read a book, or they hear some speaker and go, wow, that sounds fantastic. Or they go take a speaking course or get influenced by somebody, and this person tells them some data about life. And they go, wow, that person really impressed me. So they go out and they repeat that information to the audience. They've never tested it to see if it's true or if it works. What I've witnessed in the speaking environment is that there are a lot of speakers that are standing on stage telling the audience completely falsehoods, completely unworkable theories or data that they've learned. And it really propagates this whole aspect of false information and confusion, because people go, well, that person told me to do it and it didn't work. So I will guarantee you, if I stand on stage and say something, I've done it. I've tried it. I know it works, because that's one of my philosophies of speaking. Let me give you some other areas of my life that I have philosophies. Now, I've traveled all over the world. I've hopped on planes and I've had 18-hour time shifts. How many times do you think I go someplace and I don't get enough sleep? Well, I actually have a philosophy of sleep. And here's my philosophy of sleep. Life is lived being awake. If I'm tired, great, get up and let's go live life. Get some more sleep tomorrow, because the day's here, let's live it. And if I get too tired, I'll take a nap. But I know people that if they don't get enough sleep, they are crabby all day long. It ruins the time they're awake, because they counted the number of hours and they only got 4 hours sleep, and therefore they're crabby all day. They don't have a philosophy of sleep, or maybe they do have a philosophy of sleep. Unless they get 8 hours, they're going to be crabby. But that's not loving wisdom. That's crabby wisdom. So it's not a good philosophy. There are so many times I wake up and it's like, gosh, I'm dog tired, but man, it's a day. Let's go live it. To me, the biggest sin, another philosophy, the biggest sin I can have in my life is a wasted day. Okay. You're starting to get a feeling for who I am based on my philosophies. Here's a couple more. Driving. I used to never get speeding tickets when I drove on surface streets, but occasionally I would get a speeding ticket when I was driving on the freeway. And I spotted that I had a philosophy for driving on surface streets. I would never go more than 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. I always kept my speed down to 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. And I was always safe from getting a ticket. But when I got on the freeway, I didn't have that philosophy on the freeway. So I'd wind up going maybe 10 or 15 miles over the speed limit, and that's when I was getting tickets. So I just put in a philosophy on the freeway. And my philosophy on the freeway was very simple. It was go with the flow of traffic. Now, I'm in California. A lot of times the traffic is driving at 80 miles an hour, but and the speed limit's 65. But when the traffic's at 80, I'm not going 95. I'm going 80 with the traffic. Therefore, I'm just going down the road with everybody else. Money and activities. Here's one of my philosophies. I'd rather do something than have something. I know people that their garage is so full of stuff, they can't ever go anyplace because they spend all their money on buying stuff. I try to get rid of things. I would rather go out and do something than have something sitting in my house. I cherish activities. I cherish seeing things, going places, experiences. Those are the things that bring life to me. I have many philosophies on groups and group activity. Here's two of them. One is I get out 10 times what I put in. So if I join Toastmasters, or if I'm in Rotary, or if I'm in the National Speakers Association, all those organizations I belong to, I try to contribute to the organization as much as I can because I know I'm going to benefit 10 times for what I put into the organization. Now, if I want to get a lot out, I got to put a lot in. And the other aspect of another philosophy I have with groups is I'd rather be a player than a spectator. If I have the opportunity to partake in an activity, I'd rather be on the playing field partaking than sitting in the stands watching it. Now, as an example, in my Rotary Club, that happens all the time. You can go in, sit down and have lunch and listen to the speakers, but we have a little raffle. It's a 50-50 raffle that you sell tickets. So I usually sell the 50-50 raffle, and I go around to the table and sell tickets, and we split the money, draw the tickets, split the money at the end of the meeting. I would rather do that in the meeting than sit there and eat lunch and listen to the speaker and not partake in the activity. I have a philosophy of friendship. And here's my philosophy of friendship. You have to be a friend to have a friend. So if I want to have a lot of friends, I need to be a friend to a lot of people. And I know people that sit around and go, I don't have any friends, and life's boring, and everybody's miserable. Who do you think is boring and miserable? That person is boring and miserable because that's their philosophy on life. So I have a lot of friends, and I try to be a friend to as many people as I can. I have a philosophy on bad times. I've had some lousy times in my life. I mean, I've had people look at me and think that I've never had a bad day in my life, but I've had days that I just did not think it was even worth continuing. I just go, I don't even know why I get out of bed in the morning. I don't think I can continue this any longer. Everything's gone wrong. I just lost all my money on some business deal. And these are stories that I can fill a book with. Here's my philosophy on bad times. I can get through today. And I got to tell you, that's carried me so many times. I look down the future and it seems like my future was just dissolved and there's nothing there, but I would go, I can get through today. And I would just take it a day at a time until I got back on my feet. Let me tell you some philosophies about money I have. One of them is, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Now, you may have heard that before. I've heard that before. I grew up with that in my family being said. But how many times have I been called on the telephone with some great deal that I had a guy call me one time. It was some special deal that if I paid, I think it was like $500, I could have unlimited hotel stays at any city I went to in the country for a year. And I was going, wow. He goes, do you travel? It's all this stuff for $500, this membership in this club. You can, whenever you travel, you can stay in a hotel for free for a year. And I was talking to him and I went, Well, is that good in Los Angeles? He goes, oh yeah, we have all sorts of hotels in Los Angeles. I said, great. Well, what if I'm in Los Angeles a lot? He goes, every time you go to Los Angeles, you can stay in a hotel for free. I said, great. I live in Los Angeles. So why don't I just move out of my house and stay in a hotel every night? So I'm going to stay in a hotel 365 days in Los Angeles. And all of a sudden he's like, he puts me on the phone with his boss. And I find out that there's a complete limit on this and it's not unlimited. And I don't remember the details, but it wasn't anything like the guy was telling me. Now, if I didn't have that philosophy when he says that, I'm going to think it's true. But when I hear something, if it sounds too good to be true, I know it probably is too good. Another philosophy of money I have is I have to separate my needs from my wants. And I know people that they just look at something, they want it, they buy it, and then they can't pay their rent or they can't pay their car payment. They need to pay their rent. They need to pay their car payment. They didn't need a new pair of shoes, or they didn't need another cordless drill from Home Depot. So when I make a decision, I go, do I really need that, or is that just something I want? And here's the last one I'll tell you, because I learned this when I was about 12 years old. In the little town I grew up in, we had a clothing store, and we used to have sidewalk sales, and we walked by this rack out in front of the clothing store, and they've got shirts on it. And there was like a large shirt. I probably wore maybe a medium at that time, but there was this large shirt. It was a polo shirt, polyester. It was in a color I didn't like, but I remember it was only 25 cents. And I went, gosh, that's an incredible deal. I go, how can you turn that down? So I bought this 25-cent shirt. I took it home. The polyester was really scratchy. The color was not anything I would ever wear, and it was way too big for me. I never wore that shirt. So here's my philosophy I learned. It's only a bargain if you can use it. There's all sorts of great deals out there, but if you can use it, it's a bargain. You don't buy it just because it's cheap. The point is, as a speaker, we learn to define ourselves so we know who we are. And when we stand up in front of that audience, we have confidence in who we are, so we can speak to the audience with confidence. We can calmly be there and not have this thing start kicking that I need to change to be something that the audience would like, or I don't think I'm worthy of being here. No, I'm standing on my own 2 feet. This is who I am. This is how I define myself. This is what I believe in. I talked about earlier, I know what my story is. So I can stand up here and be the source of the information for the audience. So here's a little exercise that I would recommend you do. Jot down a number of situations in your life and write out what your philosophy is for that situation. Another way to look at it is, what is your policy? What are the principles that you apply in your life when you live it? I'm going to tell you the problem with this, though. I've given a lot of speeches where I professed my principles, or I professed my philosophy, trying to inspire the audience. And then later I ran into a situation in life where I had to take my own advice based on my speech. And I wanted to take the easy way out. I didn't want to follow my own advice that I had stood on stage and professed to the audience. And that was a very trying time, but I realized, I said, just like I said, if I'm going to stand on that stage, I'm going to test it, know that it's true. If I say something on that stage, I better live my life that way. Otherwise, I'm just a charlatan who's trying to impress people. I'm a hollow shell of an individual who's just speaking out both sides of their mouth. And that's not who I am. So some of the toughest things I've had to do is take my own advice from speeches I've given. So be careful, but it is a great opportunity for you to grow. Hope you enjoy this. Apply it, write it down. I actually have a course I want to come out with called Write Your Own Philosophy of Life. Write Your Own Philosophy of Life, where I take you through a whole series of scenarios. If you like that idea, shoot me an email and just tell me you like that idea, because I'm debating whether to bring that out or not. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this helps you be a great speaker, to change the world, and help us all get along and build a better place for all of us to live.